Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel, where today I'm going to be giving you spooky Japanese recommendations for the month of October. I apologize this for being late. I was hoping it to be at the end of September so I would actually have time to get some of these books if you were interested in them, so that you could actually read them on time. But yeah, my schedule is just a little bit chaotic right now, so sorry. Anyway, sorry for the delay. In any case, I was requested to make this video. I had a comment asking for spooky, thrilling, appropriate for the season type reads, but that were Japanese, and so I wanted to give that. I don't know that I actually read that much of this kind of genre. When it comes to Japanese literature, I definitely read more like well, I would say I read quite a bit of women's fiction in Japanese, and then a lot of I read a lot of World War II fiction in Japanese, and then I read very much books that have something to say about like society, whether Japanese, just purely Japanese society, or maybe has much more broad of an outlook. So I don't read too much, but I do have some things to introduce. So the most obvious would be to give you actual horror recommendations, right? Halloween is coming, October is spooky, da-da-da. Although, fun fact, the spooky season in Japan is not October, it's the month of August. Yeah, it's the month of August is where you get all of your spooky, like, ghost stories in the month of Japan, in Japan. And the reason for that is because it is very hot in August, it's very humid, it's very hot. Basically, you take a shower, you go back, you leave your shower, and you're covered in sweat all over again because it's very humid as well. And so it's told that if you tell ghost stories in the month of, say, August, ghost stories give you chills. Ooh, that was creepy. So the ghost stories give you chills, and that naturally cools your body down. So yeah, ghost season and scary season is actually in October. In August. Fun fact. But for the most, since the majority of my audience is US and UK, obviously Halloween, October, spooky. I love it as well. So yeah, here are the recommendations for this particularly spooky season. So let's start with the obvious and do like actual horror. So one of the big horror authors in Japan is Otsuichi. And I have, let's see, I have Natsu to Hanabi to Watashi no Shitai, which is Summer, Fireworks, and My Corpse, which is basically three friends, a brother and sister and their friend. Basically, the brother and sister kill their little friend. I think they're about like 8 years old, 7 years old. They kill the friend, they hide the corpse, and temporarily, and then they need to hide the corpse more permanently so that they're not discovered. And basically they're trying to make it seem like the disappearance of this little girl was actually done by someone else, because in the news at that current time there's sort of like a child kidnapper who has been going around the towns nearby, and so they're trying to kind of pin it on him. So basically the story is narrated from the little girl who has died, and she narrates their attempts to hide her corpse. This is fun. It's exactly what it says it is. It's just a nice little like creepy kind of story. Otsuichi always has a plot twist or two or three or four, so there's always something you can like look forward to. This one is fairly straightforward as you go along, but you will get to that plot twist and you'll be like, huh, okay. He also does a lot of short stories. So this is his collection, Zoo. In Japanese, it's actually, there's Zoo 1 and Zoo 2, but in English, it's translated to just Zoo, and I believe it contains all the short stories. And then there's one more book that I've read that has also been translated into Japanese, or not book, but collection of short stories, and that is Goth. And Goth actually has my favorite short story called 7 Rooms, and that one is pure horror, like pure horror. Like that's the most perfect story you want to read if you're looking for like horror for the season. That one was terrifying but very, very good. So if you want like actual horror, that category, Otsuichi is who you want to go for. So either novels or short story form. And all three that I've mentioned, Goth, Zoo, Summer, Fireworks, and My Corpse, those have all actually been translated into English. So then we can go into the more like thriller, like more grotesque kind of range. And for that, I would recommend Ryu Murakami. So Ryu Murakami, the other Murakami, the better Murakami in my opinion. I said it. Ryu Murakami is the good Murakami. So not all of his books will work because he has a large range. Unlike Haruki Murakami, he always writes the same book over and over again. Sorry for that, but yeah, Ryu Murakami actually has a lot of different books. So you can't just pick up any book, but two of his sort of thriller slash kind of grotesque, you know, it gets dirty, it gets bloody, books would be, the first one is In the Miso Soup. In the Miso Soup is about a American, basically sex tourist who comes to Japan for sex tourism, basically. And he hires a Japanese guide to take him around Kabukicho in Shinjuku. At the time that this was written, which was in mid-1990s, Kabukicho in Shinjuku was still a very, very seedy place. It's still a sex district, but it's not as seedy and it's not as dangerous as it used to be because Japan definitely cleaned up the area for the Olympics. Back then, it was kind of like anything goes, anything goes. And recently, a woman has just been found dismembered in a garbage. And our American tourist guide has suspicions that his client is the killer. And this gets crazy. This is wild. It gets also quite grotesque. It gets there's definitely a lot of blood in this book. So take it as you will, but this was really, really fun. I like it because you can read it on the surface level. It's just a good, thrilling book with a lot of like grittiness to it. Or you can, you know, also go a little bit deeper and look at sort of like what at the time the Japanese opinion of foreigners, particularly American tourists, especially those who come to Japan just for like sexual satisfaction and things like that. So you can take both sides. You can take a more literal side and not a more literary social side to the book, or you can just have fun with the thriller aspect. And then the other book by Murakami Ryu that is very famous, and you can also watch the movie, is Audition. And Audition is basically about a director who decides to find his next girlfriend via an audition. And he chooses this girl who's unlike any of the other girls, and his friend thinks, you know, there might be a reason she's not like everybody else. I think you need to watch out for her. But the director decides to date her anyways, and chaos ensues. And this is dark. It's again, it's very, very gritty. This book, I could not put it down. I just kept turning the page. I did not want, it was so good. So these two definitely, if you want gritty, underground kind of books, perfect. So these are the two Ryu Murakami books you want to look at. I think, but I can't exactly say for sure, one other book by Ryu Murakami called Coin Locker Babies could also work for this as more like a gritty thriller. Coin Locker Babies in the sense that back in the day, there was, I don't want to say trend because that's really kind of a sad word for what I'm about to say, but there was a trend where women were abandoning their babies in coin lockers, babies that they didn't want. They would just deposit them in the coin lockers at the train station. And the thing is that sometimes those babies were found and sometimes they weren't. So that book, Coin Locker Babies, definitely also goes into the underground kind of world of Japan. But the only thing with that one is I don't know if it has a thriller aspect to it because I haven't read it yet, but it might. So if you're interested in that one, it's definitely longer than both of these. But if you're interested in that one, definitely look up the synopsis first. before you pick it up, just in case it's not exactly a thriller. But that might also be an option, just to let you know. So now we've done thrillers. So now if you want some little nonfiction, we can do some true crime, because you're also gonna get in Japan, the underground, the seediness, the sex industry of Japan. So that's basically People Who Eat Darkness by Richard Lloyd Parry. Basically, this is obviously the true story of a 20-year-old British girl who goes missing in Tokyo, and it's basically, and she was working at as a hostess in a hostess bar, where basically what a hostess is they just talk to their clients and they provide drinks for their clients, and basically you're only supposed to talk to them, but obviously it can become sexual after that. But basically she arrives in Tokyo, and about 3 months later, she's gone, she's disappeared, and the cops initially don't just see it as her, like, not really disappearing because she got murdered, but just because, you know, she's a irresponsible 20-year-old and she just went off to have fun. But her family are like, no, something's wrong. She would not disappear like this. So this definitely goes into the underbelly of Japan. It really shows you the world of the hostess industry, the host industry, the sex industry in Japan, and really just dissolves into this really, really horrible murder, basically. So if you want to read some true crime, that's really, really quite page turning, definitely recommend this. I think this was really, really fun to read. And I mean, it's I don't want to, you know, recommend true crime because it is a horrible true story of someone who really did get killed in a horrible way. And, you know, I don't want to, like, be like, ooh, that's so spooky, Halloween season, ooh, you know, like that. But, you know, that's not exactly my intention. But there's definitely something there, you know. If that's the direction you want to go in, this is definitely recommended. I mean, I feel really kind of bad for saying that right now, but I just know I don't disrespect, you know, Lucy, who is the girl who was killed. Like, I feel really bad for her situation and bad for the family. So just want to put that out there. Gosh, I feel awful right now for recommending that. Ooh, okay, so now if you want to go in a more literary direction, you don't want to do like pure horror or thriller, like you want something like a little bit, you know, literary. In that case, I would recommend Masks by Fumiko Enchi. And this is going to be a very, very, very subtle. It's very, very subtle. But I found this book to be quite chilling. Quite chilling and really just like eerie, like really wondering what's going on. And I think that's why this could be a really, really good book for this season. And basically what this is that there's a woman who is getting pursued by two men who kind of want to marry her. One who is actually in love with her for who she is, and the other man is already married, but he wants her as his, like, mistress. The only thing is that she is a widow, and she still retains a very strong connection to her mother-in-law, the mother of her deceased husband. And the thing is that the two male characters are trying to find a way to understand that connection and even to break that connection. And that's where the book gets very eerie and very chilling, because there's a connection with this book with the Tale of Genji, the very famous classic Japanese novel Tale of Genji by Murasaki Shikibu, which does have because, you know, back in the day there was a lot of supernatural, there was belief in like almost a supernatural. That superstition comes into that book, and that superstition kind of becomes the foundation for the relationship between these two women, and there are a lot of secrets being hidden. And so I think because of that really that it creates that very chilling atmosphere, which would be perfect for the season. So yeah, if you want to go very literary, interpretation of chilling and spooky, I think Mask by Fumiko Enchi is quite good. Just to warn you though, like, it takes a while to get there. Like, this is a very, very slow book. It's a very literary book in the sense that it, like, there's interpretation of Genji and things like that. So it might take a while to get there, but like, I myself was a smidge bored at the beginning, but as I got to the end, like, it got me excited. So there's that recommendation. And then to finish off, also on the literary side, but also like kind of more on the sort of chaotic underbelly of Japan again, but very much a literary side of it. I'm holding The Ruined Map by Kobo Abe, but this one is actually the only Abe I haven't read yet, so I'm not particularly recommending this one, but I'm recommending Kobo Abe, the author himself. And you can go in several directions. So basically, Kobo Abe is very much an author who writes about Japanese society in terms of the idea of an individual versus Japanese society. So Japanese society is a very homogeneous culture. They're definitely, obviously, it's majority Japanese faces, so Asian faces. So there's not, like, it's a, not a monogamous, it's a mono something culture. I can't think of the word right now. It's escaping me. But they're very much raised to follow the rules and to sort of think as a group instead of thinking of as an individual, you know, help each other as a group. Don't stick out because you don't want to be a nuisance. So Kobo Abe very much writes about, you know, individuals that try to escape that very homogeneous, strict, rigid society, rigid culture. And the thing is that his characters are always, you know, they have this background that sort of torn down their mental state. Either like their wife, it's usually a man and his wife has usually left him, or maybe there's a traumatic past that they've gone through. But basically they enter these worlds, and as they try to escape to Japanese society decides to pursue them, and it's a battle between the two, and it creates this very paranoid state. Very much, I haven't read Dazed and Confused, but I've seen the movie, but like that very like chaotic, paranoid, sort of crazy ambiance where you always think someone is like going after you and things like that. Like that's what happens in these books. And so I think for the season, the most easily read would be the book The Face of Another. And The Face of Another is basically of a scientist who decides that he thinks his wife is cheating on him, and so to sort of catch her in the act, he decides to change his face. He creates a face for himself. He creates a mask. And he puts it on, and as he puts it on, he reflects on, you know, the idea of, you know, as a society, is it actually that we are always wearing a mask? Do we need to wear a mask to feel like we're wearing a mask? And so there's a lot of very fascinating, like, philosophical ideas going around about this whole idea of a mask. Either, you know, you're putting on a mask for a society that's different than who you are as an individual, or you're actually sort of, as the author is doing, stealing the face of another man, and how that has you create a personality based off this new face. So it's basically, it goes into the idea, does your personality create your face, or does your face create your personality? And so there's that very fantastic, you know, individual versus society. What is the individual? What creates the individual? There's that conversation that's very exciting. But I think in terms of like the spooky season of October, obviously a scientist who tries to pursue his woman by wearing the face of another man, there's definitely a very spooky element to that. There's very much a very Dr. Jekyll and Hyde element behind that, which creates this chilling, like, horrible environment. So definitely recommend The Face of Another. That'd be an excellent one. Otherwise, if you want to go in a totally different direction, Like it gets wild, it gets crazy. It's an Abe. I think it's one of his harder ones to understand for sure. But if you just want to go out there and go nuts, you can read the Kangaroo Notebook. The Kangaroo Notebook is about a man who wakes up one morning and he has sprouts, like Brussels sprouts, growing out of his legs. Crazy, right? Super crazy, right? So he goes to a doctor, and the doctor kind of says, there's something we can do, except all you can really do is just eat the sprouts as they grow. But he's like, no, I can't have sprouts growing out of my legs. So he kind of, I don't remember, I haven't read the book in a long time. But basically he goes into another clinic, and he meets this nurse, and it turns out the nurse is a vampire, and he's insistent on the fact that this nurse vampire is trying to steal his blood, so he escapes from the nurse and he enters this other world, and it just gets super crazy, and it really enters that world of Kobo Abe where there's so much paranoia and tension and fear. And it's definitely in the background. You have to remember while you're reading it, it's always about normal Japanese society trying to pursue these individuals who are trying to break away. So it's that, push and pull between the two, and how that leads to the ending. And since that book is one of his more difficult books to understand, for that one, definitely my hint into how to understand the book is to really focus on the beginning of the book, where he's still in reality, and then focus at the end of the book where reality is sort of coming back to play, because the middle is going to be a paranoid mess. It's always a paranoid mess. It's fun, but it's a paranoid mess. But there are always clues in there, but you have to know where to find them. But if you focus on the beginning, you focus on the end, you can see what's actually happening. So in any case, yeah, Kobo Abe, like those two books for sure, I think would work. So the Kangaroo Notebook and The Face of Another. So those would be my 2 recommendations. That's it. I hope that helped, and I hope you found some good recommendations for this creepy, spooky season, and both literary or crime or thriller or horror. And yeah, I hope you have fun with those, and I will see you again in my next video. Bye!